Welcome to
Thank you
India
so much,
Podcast.
Nilesa, for joining us on India Podcast today. It is our privilege to have you with us on our show here. To begin with, sir, in the current scenario, we know it is the most unprecedented, is the word we all have been hearing of it till now. Uncertainty is another part of it. First, basic understanding, how are you looking at COVID-19 outbreak has large and large into the lives of people and, of course, economy and financial world that we all part
This is clearly the most unprecedented crisis we have ever seen. In the past, we have seen medical crises like plague, Ebola, bird flu. We have seen financial crises like 2008 subprime, 2013 taper tantrum, 97 Asian crisis. But this is the perfect storm. There is a medical crisis which is locking down economic activity. It's impacting real economy, and both this are coming into financial market. So this is one spot where real economy, financial market, and medical side all are coming together at one go. I just say that this is like na bhuto na bhavishyati. We have never seen anything like this in the past, and I hope and pray that we don't see this ever in the future. This undoubtedly is the most unprecedented crisis mankind has faced in last 100 years.
there, as you have claimed that it is something that we have never seen in our past. Even on the economic part, if we were already in a slowdown phase, we were seeing that economy was not going through a good shape, and now the NPA rise would be there. There would be no business are already in a closed down, shut down, lockdown moment. How do you look at the economy particularly taking the heat, and for how long do we see them take this pressure and maybe get out of it slowly, or just struggle their way to come back to normalcy? To understand that.
So if I do a back of the envelope calculation with lots of simplistic assumptions, our current GDP is roughly about 3 trillion US dollars. A monthly output, assuming each month contributes equally, which is not the right assumption. At 100% lockdown, it's a $250 billion loss. If I assume as a thumb rule 50% activities are going on and 50% not, then it's a $125 billion loss. Obviously, we need a cost of startup because economy is not like a power switch. You just switch on and power comes. There will be a restarting cost of economy, which could be 50 billion, which could be 100 billion. We have to calculate it. Against that, India will benefit from lower oil prices. We import 1.5 billion barrel of oil every year. Oil prices comes down, we should be benefiting between 40 to 45 billion dollars. Import exports are difficult. If I can replace made in China imports with made in India goods, I can shave off $20 billion from trade deficit with China or other parts of the world. Effectively, my net cost of a monthly lockdown will be about $60 billion plus restarting of economy. Now, this cost I have to meet with fiscal stimulus, monetary stimulus, and foreign direct investment. If I can manage my fiscal and monetary stimulus and attract foreign direct investment, to a great extent, I will be able to meet this $60 billion cost of output loss and the restarting cost, which could be any number.
So with the figures that you've quite elaborately tried to suggest us, this whole figure of $60 billion loss per month would be streamed around. How long can we carry it? Even if you want to manage a fiscal stimulus there has been targets given by many on the fiscal deficit part that it should be capped at around 6% of the GDP. How long should the lockdown be continued or should be lifted to say to manage that going further in the calculation that you've shown to us?
I think we have to look at this chart. The economic recovery will be function of when does medical solution arrive and how much fiscal and monetary stimulus we get. In the most positive scenario, let's say that University of Oxford, which is doing research, and they have contracted vaccine manufacturing to Serum Institute Pune, and they have already started manufacturing 50 lakh doses. The human trial has begun on last Thursday. Let's assume that this trial is successful, these vaccines are available, and then medical solution will take care of coronavirus. The economic impact can then be taken care by fiscal and monetary stimulus. If fiscal and monetary stimulus is like Rohit Sharma's betting and there is early medical solution, then the recovery could be V-shaped. We go down in April, May, June, July, we can start bouncing back as and when medical solution emerges. In the most unfortunate scenario, if medical solution doesn't emerge at all, or it takes long period of time, and our fiscal and monetary stimulus is below our need, then the recovery will look like L-shaped. We'll fall quickly, but we will not recover at all. So today, government will have to take a look at when medical solution emerges and what is the need of fiscal and monetary stimulus. And we'll have to think out of box in order to generate this thing. Now, obviously, there is a pressure on our rating. Rating agencies have given 3-year moratorium to Italy that whatever expenditure you do on COVID-19, we won't calculate it for your rating purpose.
Yes.
Now, Italy's debt to GDP ratio is 2 times that of India, but they get that advantage because they are a white man's country. We are a brown man's country. So obviously, standards will be poor or moody in our case. Now, we have to think out of box. How do we raise resources for fiscal and monetary stimulus?
Yes.
Now, let's look at raising resources. We have custodian of enemy property. This office has about 1 lakh crore of real estate and some financial assets. We monetize that. There are funds lying in education fund, KEMFA fund, the conservation of forest fund. There are funds lying in highway authority fund. Now, can we expand the purpose of spending in those funds and realize that for reconstruction post COVID-19? Third, there are unclaimed deposits in banks, unclaimed money in mutual fund, unclaimed money in insurance companies, unclaimed money in EPFO balances. When there is unclaimed dividend, it goes back to the government after certain time. Can we move all this money into consolidated fund of India, and when it comes in, treat it as an income, but when it goes out, treat it as expenditure? Whenever a claimant comes, we'll make the payment, but at least right now we'll have income to tide over this crisis. We can also learn from Mrs. Margaret Thatcher, who was Prime Minister of United Kingdom. When she became Prime Minister, UK's conditions were not that good. And she institutionalized massive asset monetization. She, in a lighter vein, sold palaces and parks. She sold all the companies starting with British Telecom. She divested lots of assets to raise revenue and cut down bureaucracy in order to generate surplus on the budgetary side. We have lots of assets in railway, in defense. We can monetize the same. Effectively using these combinations, we will be able to generate resources to meet expenditure under COVID-19 for fiscal and monetary stimulus, and without impacting our rating, we will be able to support our economy. The second thing which is worth doing is to monetize our gold. Indians have about $2 trillion worth of gold. It's mostly unaccounted for. Now, how do I bring this dead assets into mainline economy? If government can announce a scheme whereby banks can give loan against gold, and government won't ask the source of gold, then a lot of gold which is lying unaccounted for can come into businesses. People will pledge the gold to borrow money, and over a period of time, they will depledge the gold so that there will be no NPA in the banking system. This limited financing will ensure that businesses have necessary liquidity to survive the downturn. The government benefits because the economy will recover based on that monetization. Banks benefit because they'll have adequate security of gold and they won't be suffering from NPA. Individuals benefit because their dead assets are getting utilized into business. And more importantly, future tax compliance will improve as people know that government knows what gold I have, even though they are not asking me. It's a win-win situation to monetize our dead assets and use that for the purpose of revival of this economy. If we assume 10% monetization out of $2 trillion of holding, that's $200 billion. That money can help reconstruct India post-COVID-19. It will provide financing from domestic sources without going and looking at foreign investors to fund our reconstruction. The third option is foreign direct investment.
Yes.
In 1980, India and China were of similar size. Today, China is 4 times bigger than us because they became manufacturer to the world and we were left behind. Samsung came to India long before it went to Vietnam. Today, it makes in India TV, fridge, AC, mobile phones. The turnover is about $10 billion. In Vietnam, their turnover is $62 billion. They are 6 times bigger in Vietnam, which is 1/10 the size of India. They contribute 28% of GDP to Vietnam. Their contribution to Vietnam's GDP is more than government of India's contribution to Indian GDP. Vietnam has been miracle economy because of. Now, how do we ensure that we are able to help Samsung flourish in India like they have flourished in Vietnam? More importantly, how do we ensure that we bring people from China who are looking to move out of China to India? Well, we have a fantastic example. You know, Tata Motors wanted to set up a plant in Singur and it didn't work out. There was a SMS sent called there was an SMS sent Suswagatam or welcome to Tatas, and they came to Sanand. They got land, they got power connection immediately, they got environmental approval, they got all the necessary approvals. They were attended 24/7 to ensure that their factory continues to build at a faster pace. And in about 18 months, nano cars started rolling out of Sanand factory. What we did with Tata Motors, we have to do it with companies which wants to move out of China. If you can bring 200, 500 of such companies and we can help them flourish like Vietnam helped Samsung, can you imagine what will be growth in Indian economy? When one Suzuki came, it made India export surplus in automobile sector.
Yes.
It's the only engineering item in which India is export surplus. We have $14 billion surplus in exporting automobile, auto components kind of things. If we can bring many more Suzukis, many more Samsungs and help them flourish, I think India's economy can start catching up with China, which has left us behind by more than 4 times. So we need out-of-box ideas. We need unconventional thinking. We need to leverage our resources. We need to work as a nation. And I'm sure government is looking at all these options to ensure that post-COVID-19, India becomes the fastest growing economy in the world.
So with that in focus, all monetizing aspect that you have shared with us, an important immediate concern is moving consumption pattern in India. You have to create demand. There is an issue of the social fabric in India. Our workers are in panic state, getting them back to work, whether any sectors which have been massively hit. We're talking about aviation, hotel, transport. All these industries have been massively, immediately hit. And they need workforce to come back in place. How would you roll the economy immediately from a complete lockdown state, because the government has not really pushed the wheel till now? We are completely locked jammed for now. How do you think the consumption pattern of India should also play a role other than the other factors and out of box plans of monetizing and improving our exports and FDIs in the country? Because without a demand, these sectors anyway fall apart.
I'll give you an example of Mumbai textile mills. My father was working in a textile mills, and we saw a very bad time in our family when there was a strike in textile mills. Mumbai was having probably 70 or 80 textile mills. Textiles were contributing large portion of Mumbai's economy. And as textile mills started shutting down, job losses mounted. Families like us suffered a lot. Now, we created National Textile Mills Corporation, NTC, also they are loss making. They temporarily provided employment, but it was of no use. Slowly and steadily, one by one, all the textile mills started shutting down. Today, I doubt if any textile mill is operating in Mumbai. Yes. But after 10, 15, 20 years, what has happened? In some textile mills, malls have come. In some textile mills, industrial, commercial complexes have come. In people who left their jobs in textile companies moved into other sectors. and Mumbai is still a thriving city. We have to ensure that market takes precedence over what is the current situation. Let market forces evolve. Let our entrepreneurs be supported. They'll figure out a way out of this crisis. Let there be one easy approvals on acquisition of land, easy approval on arrangement of labor. If you don't need surplus labor, you should be able to retrench them. Let there be lower cost of capital. Our entrepreneurs cannot compete in the world if they have to pay 12% interest rates and their competitor is paying 2% interest rate. If we can sort out issues of land, labor, and capital and give freedom to our entrepreneurs, I'm sure they'll figure out a way out of current crisis. Like Mumbai's entrepreneurs find out a solution from the textile shutdown. Mumbai is a thriving city not because it supported textile industry. Mumbai is a thriving city because it allowed market to convert those textile mills into commercial complexes, into shopping malls, and redeployed that labor. That's what we have to do.
So giving a friendly approach to entrepreneurs might change the entire scenario and they might create their own demand there with prices there. So moving from here, as you have hinted, let things not affect the larger market. You know the major issue that has come by with Franklin Templeton and the mutual fund investors. Large and large, you have told that it will not impact the entire industry to say. But do you think there was a better way they could have handled the entire fiasco? Or there is a message that mutual fund investors have taken wrong from this one particular incident like happened in NBFC. One NBFC falling down led to a crisis in the entire sector. Will we see that transpiring through it, or is there a way out because one event has quite created panic in the market?
So I really can't talk about Franklin Templeton because I really don't understand their thinking. I'm sure they have taken decision which will work for the benefit of unit holders. My recommendation to investors will be that you please look at individual funds portfolio and then take a call. If you are comparing Kotak Mutual Fund, credit risk fund or liquid fund or equity fund, please look at our portfolio and get your own conviction. If you believe my portfolio has instruments and securities which you are comfortable with, stay invested. If you believe that those securities are not worth owning, then please redeem. Don't go by emotions, go by rationality. Don't go by what others are saying. Go by your own little research, your own little thinking. If you read my fact sheet and you see what portfolios I'm owning, I'm 100% confident that your judgment will be as good as my judgment in staying with Kotak Mutual Fund. What happened with Templeton is because of their credit profile, because of their liquidity profile. If any institution sees all the investors trying to exit at one time, then obviously portfolios are not geared for that kind of mass exodus. We build our portfolios with sufficient liquidity and contingencies, but no one provides for a contingency where everyone will disappear at one go. All I request investors, please look at my portfolio and then come to a judgment. I will respect your judgment, and I'm quite confident looking at our quality and our liquidity, your decision will be to remain invested with us.
So has COVID-19 created a redemption pressure in the market? Because, you know, this is a scenario where people just don't know whether they have cash, they want to withdraw more cash. Are they unlocking themselves from the money, or fear of money being frozen as a separate event issue? But at present, is COVID-19 having an impact, and the redemption pressure we saw in the last 2-3 days, is it manageable? Because RBI has also come up with an option of pushing through a 50,000 crore window there for MF. So how do you understand COVID impact on the MF industry for that matter?
So undoubtedly, COVID-19 has created some need for cash flow. If your revenues have plummeted in the month of April and your cost continues, then obviously you will redeem your investments. Now, all corporate investments or retail investments or HNI investments are not only in mutual fund. We have reasonable share, but insurance, banks, and others also have a reasonably good share. So we have seen some amount of redemption, but by and large, I wouldn't call it abnormal. In all low credit risk fund, right from overnight fund all the way up to dynamic bond funds, we have seen redemptions as per expectations, no significant development. On credit risk fund, obviously when on Thursday night Templeton announced winding down, there was panic. Friday there was redemption. Monday it continued. But Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, it tapered off significantly. It's down today probably 70 to 90% across years. The effort which we put on in communicating to investors that please look at fact sheets and then take a call. Any investor who looked at our portfolios has decided to remain invested.
So the demand kind of we saw created in the MF space since 2016, I remember. So we had interviewed you also, the kind of surge we saw in the MF space and the trust people had in the space. Do you think that will be held on for the going further, looking at the whole picture being little slowed and in a very shattered manner? Do you think people will still be having interest in MF space the way it had started in 2015-16, and we saw the surge go very high for the first time in the history?
So the trust, obviously you have to gain over a period of time, and it can disappear with one incidence. Trust जीतने के लिए आपको जिंदगी भर मेहनत करनी पड़ती है, आपकी गलती उसे शीशे की तरह तोड़ सकती है. Undoubtedly, mutual funds will have to work hard to regain investors' trust. We have to get it by our conduct, our transparency. Let me give you an example about our own fund. In April 2019, 6 of our FMPs were maturing. We had certain investments in SL Group debentures, and they couldn't pay us on time. We had two choices. Either we sell those debentures at throwaway prices and return just 10, 20, 30% of our investors' money, or withhold that money and try to recover full money and pay back to investors. We chose the second portion. We chose the second path. At that point of time, many investors said, Nilesh bhai, whatever you are doing, I'm sure it is for our interest. That was the goodwill, that was the trust which we had created. There were many investors who said, what have you done? You are taking away our money. You have not done your job properly. We are worried about you. But in 6 months, we recovered money thanks to the borrowers' cooperation. They had no intention of defaulting on our obligation. They always wanted to pay back. They just needed some time. They worked very hard and paid us back. And we returned money with accrued interest within 6 months to all our investors. Today, every single investor is appreciative of the effort we have done. Now,
there is no need to fear any further investment. It depends what trust you have with a particular mutual fund investor and the fund manager.
Absolutely. So it is our conduct, it is our transparency which will build trust. And I'm sure those investors who have experienced us, who have seen our portfolios, they will retain their trust. They will keep their trust. But I can't take trust for granted. I have to add value to my customer's portfolio. I may have a 25 years track record of performance, but if for next 6 months, 1 year, 2 years, I don't perform, then obviously I will lose the trust. Customers give me money so that I can add value to them. If I can't add value to them, I can't retain their trust.
So with the current situation, could you also give us a hint which sectors, according to you, are a little overweight in the market if we specifically talk about? Because we know certain sectors have taken hit, but market is still going up high. I mean, we are in a bear market situation, but we still see some progressive approach in the last few days. How are you looking at markets, and especially some sectors which you think are overweight at this point and can be looked at?
From a sectoral point of view, one sector which we have been bullish is chemicals and specialty chemicals. India's global market share has increased from 2.5% to 4% over last couple of years. China, on the other hand, has come down from 43% to 39%, and it will dwindle further. Like IT industry started first receiving multi-million-dollar contracts, and then it became multi-$100-million contracts, and eventually become billion-dollar contracts. We are seeing similar trend in chemical industry. Indian companies are getting multi-million-dollar contracts, and eventually it will go into multi-$100 million contract. So So chemicals and specialty chemical is one space where we think there is great opportunity for India, just like it was in IT industry in Y2K time. We are also bullish on contract manufacturing firms. These are the firms which manufacture consumer durables today and supply to the global brands who market it in India. It's quite likely that they will be chosen as a global supplier. This opens up their scale by 5 times, 10 times, 15 times, 20 times. So that's one sector we are looking at. In financial services, we believe savings pool will increase, and companies which can participate in that savings pool as people become conservative and start saving for rainy days, companies which can participate in that savings pool will benefit. It could be mutual fund, insurance, or even banks. We are also trying to avoid leverage companies across our portfolios. Leverage will become lethal in this point of time. And clearly companies which have more than necessary leverage will find it difficult to protect shareholder value. So we are staying away from leveraged entities as far as possible. Overall, we believe while one should focus on sector on a top-down basis, at the end of the day, it's the promoter which makes the difference. And this is my favorite chart, which I want to keep for viewers. There are good promoters, bad promoters. There are good business, there are bad business. Good businesses are business where return on equity, return on capital employed is more than the cost of capital. Bad businesses are where you earn 8% and you have to pay 10%, eventually you'll go bankrupt. Good promoters are promoters who have vision, who will execute things, and most importantly, they will honor minority shareholders. Bad promoters are promoters who are going to cheat minority shareholders. As an investor, you should invest in good business with good promoters. That is long-term investment. As an investor, you have to avoid bad investor, bad promoter in bad industry, bad businesses. That's bound to lose money. And in between, when you have bad business but good promoter, or good business but bad promoter, at best what you can do is trading. It's more meant for speculators rather than long-term investors. So we want to focus on this segment where we are dealing with good businesses, we are working with good promoters, and hence there will be volatility and ups and downs in return, but over a period of time we'll end up making positive return.
The IIP numbers negative, GDP also we've gone down now 5%. I think we're aiming at 2 to 3% if June becomes the month where we are able to contain COVID. Are you going to revise your Nifty targets? Do you think you want to revise it at this point with even the IIP numbers coming out? Is there kind of a change in your opinion around that?
We don't predict Nifty targets. Life has taught us very early that there's no way one can predict future. My 30-year career, I have never met a person who can predict future. Our job is to invest in good businesses run by good promoters at good prices. Now, as long as I am in this quadrant of good business, good promoters bought at good prices, I will make money eventually. I will outperform the market eventually. So there's no Nifty target for me. The targets are always moving. If companies with prices will come down, if companies get certain advantage, price target will move up. Our job is not to predict Nifty. Our job is to invest in good businesses run by good managers at good prices. It's so easy to say, but in 30 years, I can assure you, it's very, very difficult to execute.
So last, just 2 questions we have from a caller from you. This is a question from Nishant Singhal, who's also a co-founder of UVCam Ventures. He sent in a question for you saying that RBI is invested in US treasuries, and what are the possible risks at this point in time with the scenario prevailing? If you have
Anku, I couldn't hear you. You'll have to repeat it.
The question that has come for you is RBI is invested in the US treasuries, and what are the possible risks at this point you see there?
I don't think so. There is any risk on US treasury. US is right now the superpower, and the reserve currency status generally lies to a country whose military might is very strong. Great Britain pound lost its reserve currency status because the sun started setting on British Empire, and World War I and World War II destroyed their military might significantly. In the near term, I think there's no rival to US from a military point of view. China is rising rapidly, but after what they've done in managing coronavirus crisis, their image has been beating of several notches. Fortunately for us, our image has gone up. China has given Wuhan virus, given hydroxychloroquine tablets, and God is kind, will also be providing vaccine. एक दर्द दे रहा है, दूसरा दवाई दे रहा है, एक जख्म दे रहा है, दूसरा मरहला। बचाने वाले की कीमत हमेशा जान लेने वाले या मारने वाले से ज्यादा ही रहेगी. So I don't think we have to worry about our investments in US Treasury, and we should focus on rebuilding our economy post COVID-19.
Last, what is your appeal to people at this point? We have a lot of front foot warriors there, doctors and police people, bankers and essential service provider, all working on ground. Government is doing their bit. Everybody's working on their front. You guys are working from home. A lot in life must have changed for now for working from home. Things have become more hectic for people. Life has become more busy. What is the message for people there at home waiting desperately for lockdown to open, and still they have managed to survive this unprecedented phase of life for everybody?
My message to everyone is stay safe, stay healthy. Right now, of your physical health, your financial health, which has deteriorated due to this crisis, we should be able to cover it up in the days to come. If God is kind us, we get early and we get fiscal and monetary stimulus. Don't worry about financial health deterioration. Just stay safe, stay healthy, get your physical health in proper shape, and I'm sure that with steps taken by the government and RBI, we will be able to recover our financial health in the days.
So, one candid question to you: how has life been with working from home? How much do you think you have learned in the last 1 month? Has anything changed for you for good now when you come back to a normal life now?
I think over the years, I started taking many things for granted, consciously or unconsciously. I never knew how hard my wife was working at home. I never knew how important it was to have office assistants who were constantly supporting me. I never appreciated how important it was to meet my colleagues and discuss with them. This lockdown has made me realize that I have to be thankful to so many people who have supported me all throughout my life. I have to thank my family because they are doing all kinds of work in this challenging time. I have to thank my office assistants who have supported me so much. I have to thank my office colleagues who have shared my burden. Somewhere this lockdown has made me realize that it is always the team effort. It is never one-man army which goes against the board. It's always the effort of the entire team which helps you match. So I become more appreciative about everyone's effort in the days to come. This is the biggest learning of the lockdown.
That is a very humble confession to say so. More than a message, I think you've made such a big confession to learn from, that we should be grateful for things we have been getting for so long. Thank you so much for your time, and thank you for sharing your message, your understanding, and your personal views for us. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Brought to you by India Podcasts in association with ICI Healthcare for Pure Care Sanitizers.